Good morning, everyone. All right, so today we're going to be working in the chair, and largely because I got some back pain going on. Had a long day yesterday. Basketball is now 6 days out of the week on the basketball court, which for these old bones is kind of tough. Coaching basketball puts a lot of stress on my knees, a lot of stress on my hips. Went to bed last night, I was kind of feeling my hip tighten up, and through the night, woke up low back, right side, got that nice twisted up old man back. So gonna work in the chair, largely looking at improving hip mobility, improving breath, and then improving that spinal mobility related to the pelvis. See if I can get my back to get a little bit more open where I can stand up straight. So as I get set up, I'm probably going to do a little stand up just to kind of see where my posture is visually, standing up and walking. And then we'll get started. Hopefully by the end of the class, I'll have better mobility, I'll feel a little bit looser, and have a little bit more access to movement in my low back. So let's get started. So just kind of like somewhat of a visual. So right side low back is where I feel most tight. I feel this area kind of cranking down. My right hip feels a little bit anterior tilted, so I feel like I got some twist. Shoulders more than likely a little bit offset. I got a feeling wanting to shift over this way. Not the worst that it's been as far as pain, but right side low back, where it's the kind of the most acute. So we're going to get into our chair work and see if we can work that out. Starting out in the seated position, I want to get into breaths, specifically seeing if I can access breath in this right side low back space. Generally, when something is unstable, knee, hip, ankle, this area of our low back is a really prime area for binding of tissue, binding of fascia, to kind of like shorten in order to create tension through the rest of the body. So we can create tension, which is stability, in order to stabilize other areas of the body that might be unstable. I have 5 knee surgeries on my right knee, so I deal with some significant knee instability. So being on the basketball court on a regular basis tends to expose instability to my body, and that back will seize up in order to protect that instability. So first thing is seeing if we can get breath into that space. So we're going to start with our crocodile breath, making our big C shapes with the hands. The thumbs are going into the low back. Index fingers are wrapping around the front. Palms are pressing into the side body space. Hands are below the ribs and above that hip bone. And we're going to take nice big inhales in through the nose, out through the mouth, and as we exhale, drawing the navel up and in towards the spine. And as we exhale, we're also going to kind of clench down on those hands in order to create some resistance for our inhale, because I really want to feel that balloon action of the abdominal wall. So nice inhale through the nose, full exhale out through the mouth. And with each inhale, see if you can expand the wall of that balloon a little bit wider. I want to use this breath as an assessment. Part of the reason I have my hands in place is so that I can get a feel. I have 6 points of contact that I am touching. My thumbs in the back are what I'm assessing because that's where I feel the most tension, but I'm also assessing side body. Can I breathe out through this space? Can I feel breath moving outward? Can I feel that breath moving forward into the belly through those index fingers? And then obviously the thumbs, can you feel that low back expanding out and away? As I get a nice inhale breath, I feel a little stretch related to this right side space. It's able to move, which is a good thing. That's largely because I practice this breath daily, but it's restricted. It's not moving as well as it normally does. Once we get about 5 to 6 breaths, and now I want to get into a little bit of pelvic tilt with that breath. So on our inhale, as we're breathing into the belly, very lightly letting the pelvis tilt forward. Now I want to go light because with this pain, there might be pain with lumbar extension or with lumbar flexion. So I want to assess those points. So as we inhale, we're allowing that breath to move into the body. Pelvis tilts lightly forward, taking us into lumbar extension. As we exhale, we're drawing that navel in and we're scooping the pelvis lightly, getting a little bit of length and stretch in that low back, going into lumbar flexion. I want to try to keep the head and the shoulders directly over the hips. And I want to go really slow with our breath. This can be a 4 or 5 second count, inhale to exhale. We can work up to an 8 second count, inhale to exhale. Generally, at this point, when there's pain present, the slower we go, the better, because I want to make sure that we're not pushing into level 3 or above pain. As an assessment point, as I inhale, pelvis tilts forward, I am limited in my lumbar extension, specifically on this right side. It's pain. As I get right here, I am at my level 2, and that's really as far as I can go without pushing further. My flexion feels pretty good, so I want to move into that flexion because that gives me more range to be able to move into extension. Even if I'm not able to go all the way forward into extension, I'm now at least able to get from this more flexed position up into a little bit of active extension. The action of extension is taking place in the spine. I'm doing 5 to 10 nice, gentle reps. Next, I want to get a little bit into some kind of checking in with the hips. There's always going to be a strong relationship between hips and that low back space. It could be same side hip, it could be opposite hip, or it could be a relationship in which both opposite hip and same side hip are combined into that space, low back space. So we're going to bring ankle up to a knee, getting into a nice figure 4 position. From here, we're still working on that crocodile breath. Nice slow inhale. On the exhale, we're going to lightly reach that knee like you're trying to touch the floor with the knee. Inhale, we're lifting that knee up to the ceiling. Again, nice slow breaths. I'm in pain. I don't want to move and push into that pain further. I'm trying to move at states of slight discomfort, not pain. At level 1, level 2, where it feels kind of good. It should not feel sharp. It should not make it to start to make that pirate look. Our body shouldn't tense up because we're pushing into it too much. And when we're in active pain, the slower we go, the better. One thing that I like to tell clients is, however slow you are going, you can always go slower. Once we get 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to switch to the other side. Notice the difference in how both your knees sit. Does one knee sit higher? Does one hip feel tighter? Nice inhale, that knee can lift. On the exhale, we're reaching it down towards the floor. Now in this position, my right hip is generally tighter. It does not want to open up as much. It's a lot easier moving into internal rotation and hip flexion than it is external rotation and extension in this figure 4 position. That's fairly normal for my right side. For the most part, in this position, both hips feel fairly similar. Once we get through 5 to 10, we're going to switch back to the first side again. Now, I know that I can get into flexion, so I'm going to get into a little bit of folds. If flexion is painful in the low back, going into folds may not be available, so we have to pay attention to what movements we can do based on that pain. So from here, ankle and knee, nice inhale, filling up that crocodile breath. Exhale, we're drawing that navel in as we let our hands kind of just cascade over our shins lightly. Inhale, bringing them back, getting nice and tall, filling up that crocodile breath. Exhale, nice, slow forward fold. Notice, where do you feel this? Do you feel it more in that low back? Do you feel it more in the hip? Do you feel it in the front of the hip? Maybe you feel it up in the shoulders and the neck as well. That can be in, some of the stuff that we have dealing with low back pain can have roots that move up into the shoulders and the neck, so I want to pay attention to that as well. As you're moving into it, if your body allows you to go further without more pain, if it gives you more access to range of motion and the pain actually gets better as opposed to gets worse, then I want to move into that very, very safely, but I want to take advantage of it. Once we get 5 to 10, we're going to switch back to the other side. We're doing the same thing. Nice inhale, filling up that crocodile breath. Exhale, hands come over that shin. This side is tighter for me. I feel it more in my right glute now, and I feel that right glute also move up into that low back. So I have a nice little juicy stretch as I fold in both that glute and very little into that low back space. So I look at that as like, this is an important movement. I don't want to force it. I'm not trying to make it right, but this is an area in which my body is not moving well. I want to see if I can encourage slow, safe movement. Can I get that area to lengthen? Can I rewire that neurology to allow it to stay so it doesn't want to go back to being tight? If I force it, my body's going to have the opposite response. It's going to tighten up even more. So I have to stay really soft, and kind of like in more of a listening state to the body. I don't want to be forceful. I can feel a little bit more range of motion as I get into these a little bit more. Once we get balanced out, we're going to bring feet back down to the floor. Now I want to bring a little bit of energy into the upper body. So we're going to do kind of get into our shoulder work. Arms are going to drop down to the side. We're going to spiral those palms up to the ceiling. I want to spread the hands as wide as possible as we spiral up. Feel that nice opening up. See if you can feel your chest kind of open and lift to the ceiling. As we inhale, as we exhale, we're going to spiral those hands over and lightly reach forward so that we get a little rounding through that upper back. Inhale, spiraling palms up as we bring the hands more to our side, reaching down to the floor. Feel that nice open and lift. As we inhale, see if you can inhale up into the upper chest. Exhale, nice reach forward. All I'm doing is getting this nice rounding through the upper back. Now as I'm getting into this movement, this reach and rotation, as I reach forward, exhale, even though I'm not getting a lot of movement down into that low back, I'm feeling the stretch, the pull of the shoulders, get a little bit of pull into that low back area. So we're going to add another layer into this. I want to come back and start to play with that pelvic tilt related to what we're doing with our shoulders. So as I reach and spiral thumbs down to the floor, I'm exhaling. I'm also going to scoop the pelvis so I start to get a little rounded in the low back. At the same time that I'm still reaching forward through the hands so I get that nice upper back rounding and low back. Can you feel some stretch through that entire space? As we inhale, pelvis tilts forward, hands come down to the side as we spiral up, opening up the chest to the ceiling. You don't want to lift, breathe in to the chest, feeling that lift up, kind of like into that clavicular level of our upper chest. Exhale, scoop, and round. Spine extension is still a little still a little sensitive for me, so I'm going slow into this extension. I don't want to force it. I'm working more through the upper chest, seeing if I can draw more energy up into that upper breath. Flexion actually seems to be improving. I'm getting more range of motion of pelvic tilt, even if I'm limited in how far I'm able to go into that spinal extension. All right. So now I want to get a little bit into our neck. I want to grab the base of the chair so that I can pull my shoulder blades down. So I'm kind of grabbing and pulling. I want to spiral those elbows out and away so that we feel the shoulder blades pack down. As we pull, I don't want those shoulders rounded forward. I want to feel them elbows spiral back, chest is opened up, shoulder blades are reaching down our back to our back pockets. I want to try to maintain that. The reason for this is I don't want shrugging as I'm going through my neck mobility. I want to create some downward tension in the shoulders so that we can isolate the neck a little bit. From here, we're going to start by checking our blind spots. Very slowly looking over your right shoulder. As you exhale, inhale coming back to center. Exhale, looking over the left shoulder. My left rotation is tighter than my right rotation. Going slow on this. With each one, I'm seeing how far can I reach my chin over the edge of that shoulder, the crest of the shoulder. I want to avoid reaching from the forehead, so I don't want to tilt as I rotate, where I actually get my head out of alignment. I want to stay nice and tall, and I'm leaning, reaching with the chin more than the forehead. We'll do 5 to 10 in each direction. Next, we're going to get into our tilt and lift. So lightly dropping the ear towards one shoulder. I don't want to drop it all the way down. It's a very light drop. Then opposite ear, we're imagining that we got a piece of string, lifting that ear up towards the ceiling, or like you're trying to touch the ceiling with your ear. Exhale as you lift. Inhale as you bring your head to the center. Lightly tilt. Exhale as you lift to the other side. This one's a really important one to notice the difference of one side compared to the other. I'm a little bit tighter on this left side, although both sides are relatively tight and restricted. I have more access to movement on that right side than I do on the left. We can add a little downward pull. So we're already kind of pulling down through the shoulders, but as you lift that left ear up, you can also use that left hand to lightly pull that shoulder down to create a little bit more traction. Again, I don't want to be forceful with it, but I do want to see how much can we kind of move into that length, side to side. Good. Next, we're going to do some shallow neck rolls. We're going to start by allowing the head to drop down towards the chest. I don't want to drop fully. I want to keep this shallow to start with, and we'll slowly get deeper into it as it feels comfortable. So from chin to chest, we're going to allow the right ear to move towards the right shoulder. Then we're going to allow our gaze to move up to the ceiling, and then our left ear to our left shoulder, and then chin back down to chest. And we're going to continue through those movements 5 up to 10 times. And as we're moving through, we're going to slowly start to smooth those 4 points out into more of a circle. Nice inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. I want to go very, very slow. You may feel some crackliness as you go through this range of motion. As long as it is not painful, it's okay to move through that. I want to think about kind of de-crackling the crackle. If it is painful, then you need to back off. You need to make the range of motion shallow, more shallow. I don't want to move into pain when it comes to our neck. After 5 to 10 in one direction, we're going to switch directions. Doing this, and I want to start shallow again. Starting slow, keep it easy. Just because we worked in one direction doesn't mean the other direction is going to move in the same way. As I'm coming through this rounded part in this opposite direction, I have a lot more of an acute stretch on that left side than I did when I was moving in the other direction. And if I was moving fast, it would be painful. It's right here. Oh, as long as I'm going slow, it feels good, feels juicy. It's not painful, but it's definitely tight. So I want to be cautious with it. Now that I'm a few reps in, it is giving me a little bit more access. I'm able to get deeper without that acute tension, definitely without pain. All right, so now we're going to get into our hips. So in our chair, I want to sit in a side stance. The back of the chair is now to my left. I want to have the knee as much underneath the hip as possible, shoulders over the knee, head over the shoulders. Back foot is tucked. I want to kind of have that big toe tucked underneath. And I want to start with just kind of playing with that back foot, doing some foot mobility. So one of the things we can do is just simply, oh, that's not a good position. Feel that big toe pushed into the ground as if we're going to drive out of this position to go into a dead sprint. And we can drive through that big toe. Might need to change that position a little bit. We can let that knee shift forward, moving into that big toe. We can let that heel shift back. Kind of rocking forward and backwards, feeling. Can you get a little bit more stretch into that big toe? We can also do some wags of that ankle, rolling that ankle out so that we roll out to the pinky toe, rolling that ankle in so we're rolling back to the big toe. I know this should not feel strenuous. This should be really, really light, but I do want to feel that, little bit of stretchiness, a little bit of mobility. Feeling good, again, it should feel juicy, moving into to the feet. You might even notice that your quads getting a little fatigued just from kind of sitting here and being active through that foot. Once we get a little bit of that through the right side, we're going to switch to the other side and do the same thing. Kind of get a little bit of rocking through that big toe, letting that knee shift forward, and then reaching the heel back. And it's not a huge range of motion. Notice if this big toe feels tighter, stiffer than the other. My left big toe actually feels significantly stiffer than my right big toe does, which may be part of what's going on through this hip. Left big toe, left hip is tight, moving into that opposite side of my low back, creating that tightness and compression in order to help stabilize for an unstable right knee. And we can get into our wagging, letting those heels kind of roll in and out. Again, the main thing we're doing here is kind of just coating the joints with synovial fluid, getting in, kind of moving those joints around. I want it to feel good and juicy, not painful. We're going to switch back to the other side. I want that big toe tucked and loaded. The more we're able to keep that big toe tucked and loaded, we're going to get into our pelvic mobility. If you have to keep that foot untucked, we can get some pelvic mobility in this position. But getting that big toe tucked, the relationship between the big toe and the pelvis is going to be a little bit more substantial. So this is an important position to work towards. If you have too much pain or immobility in that big toe, it may take a little work to get to this point. We may have to start with that big toe untucked. I'm going to teach it with the big toe tucked because ultimately this is where I'm at and where I need that work. So I got that big toe dug in as if I'm going to jump out of this chair into a dead sprint. We're coming back into our breath, and I want to just work pelvic tilts of just this side. So as we inhale, breathing into that belly, pelvis is tilting forward. It's taking us into that lumbar extension related to this one side of the hip. On the exhale, we're drawing our navel in and we're scooping into that. So we want to feel posterior pelvic tilt, which is also going to go in a little bit into spinal flexion. Inhale allows that pelvis to tilt forward, a little bit of extension. Exhale, feel that hip lock in, feel that stretch through the front of the hip. Get an extension on this side, very, very limited, especially related to this right side, foot and hip. I'm going to be very curious if I have better extension in my spine as we switch over to the other side related to my left hip. So big toes tucked underneath, knee is directly under the hip. Nice inhale, filling up the belly, that pelvis is allowed to tilt forward, getting a sway in the back. Exhale, we're drawing that navel up and in as we scoop that pelvis. You should feel that drive into the big toe and load into the front of the hip, getting a little bit of a stretch. Inhale, moves us into extension. Exhale, feel that belly button draw in, nice scoop. Now, I'm able to get a little bit more extension in my spine related to the left hip than I was on the right hip. So I'm hoping that by the time we get through the series of hip mobility and spinal mobility on the chair, that I get a little bit of improvement specifically to this spinal extension on that right side, because that feels very limited. That feels like it's probably the primary movement crux that I'm dealing with. That's the pattern that's not working in my body. I'm going to see if I can bring that pattern back a little bit. We're going to switch back to the first side. We're going to do 5 of the same thing, and then we're going to add something to it. So big toe is still tucked and loaded. Inhale, filling up that belly, pelvis tilts forward. I've already got a little bit more access to spinal extension on this right side. Coming back to it a second time, this feels significantly improved just from a minute ago. Exhale, drawing that navel in as I scoop, feeling that load through the front of the hip. It's still sensitive, so I'm not perfect. I don't have great access, but it's, I'd say it's like 20% improved, which is a significant amount of improvement. On the fifth one, we're going to start to add lift, reach through the hands. So going to inhale into that belly, exhale, drawing the navel in as we scoop. And at the same, I want to lock in that hip. And then we're seeing if we can add reach, trying to lift up to touch the ceiling. Inhale, we're letting that shoulder soften as we breathe into the belly, going into that sway in the back. Exhale, scoop, lock that hip in, and reach. I want to avoid on this, I don't want to drop my opposite shoulder. I want to keep that shoulder even. As we scoop, I'm seeing if I can elevate this shoulder without dropping the other shoulder. Can I get long through this side of my spine relative to the hip up to the shoulder? Inhale, I'm bringing it back down. Exhale, scoop, and reach. After 5, up to 10. We're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Starting with just our pelvic tilts again. So 5, digging that big toe into the ground. Inhale, feel that pelvis tilt forward as we get sway in the back. Exhale, scoop, feel that load in the big toe, load and stretch on the front of that hip. On the fifth one, as we inhale to exhale, feel that scoop, lock in that hip, and then we're adding in reach. Inhale as we let that shoulder soften, let the pelvis tilt forward, sway in the back. Exhale, scoop as we draw in and reach up. Again, I want to watch out for dropping that opposite shoulder. Now, I feel like I have a little bit more access to lumbar extension, but my reach on this side is really challenged. Like my left leg feels like it's working 4 times harder than my right side was. So there is something off in this particular pattern of my body, this is going to have a direct relationship to low back into that glute on the right side. So the front of the left side is a direct relationship to the back of the right side in gait mechanics. So my low back and my glute were tight when we did folds on the right side. And on the left side, it's the anterior hip that feels off. So there's a pattern relationship between these two systems, movements, parts of the body. So that's probably going to be a big factor in why my back hurts this morning. I can definitely feel that stiffness in the big toe is part of the reason I'm really struggling on accessing the quad on that left side. So we're going to switch back to the other side. We're going to do 5 of our hip, just that hip tilt again, and then we're adding in rotation. So big toe is still tucked and loaded. Nice inhale, filling up that belly, letting the pelvis tilt forward, big sway in the back. Exhale, scoop, load, feel that load through the front of the hip. Now again, I still feel this difficulty getting into extension, but each time I come back to it, it's getting a little bit better. Not, it's like maybe 1% better from the last time. It's not massive gains, but it's incremental improvement, which I find incremental improvement to be more beneficial than massive improvement. Massive improvement tends to be short-lived. Incremental improvement, we can kind of rewire our neurology to support it a little bit better. We can hold it longer. Once we get to 5, on our inhale, as we exhale, scoop, lock in that back hip. And from here, we are turning our chest towards the back of the chair. If you can, we can grab the chair lightly to assist, kind of turning our chest a little bit more to face that side wall. Inhale, we're releasing to come back forward. Inhale into that sway of the back. Exhale, scoop. Slow rotation. Want to make sure we're not moving into pain here. This actually feels really good. It's a little challenging coming back out. As I move into it, it's like, oh, that feels good and juicy. As I come out, it's a little sensitive. So we're going to switch to the other side. This may be a movement that I need to do more than once in order to really feel comfortable with. So coming to the other side, again, we're going to start with breath and just the pelvic tilt for 5 before we add in that rotation. So big toes loaded. Inhale, filling up the belly, big sway in the back. Exhale as we draw the navel in and scoop. Notice what levels of improvement there might be on this side. I'm feeling a little bit more mobility in my left big toe, more stretch related to that more mobility as well. And once we get to 5, I want to scoop, lock that hip in, and then we're slowly rotating towards that back of the chair. You can grab that chair lightly to help us assist to turn into it more. Release on the inhale, sway in the back, exhale, scoop, drawing navel in, lock that hip, and then nice rotation. We go ahead and switch back to the other side. I'm standing up, and I already tell my back's, I've got a little bit straighter. It is not nearly as tight as it was at the beginning of the class. So I'm definitely feeling some improvements. So we're going to continue to do a little bit of these pelvic tilts. We're going to go back through a couple of our movements that we already did. And I'm going to actually add one more. So, we're going to work at kind of a hip drop from here. On the inhale, as we're allowing that pelvis to tilt forward, I want to reach down, see if we can drop that hip a little bit below the level of the chair. Can you touch the floor with your knee or come close to that floor? Exhale as we lift that hip up. Inhale, allow that hip to drop. Exhale, can you pull that hip back up? I want to make sure that this is not painful. If it's painful, then we got to back off. And it might be a movement that we want to skip for now and come back to later. I want to see, we're trying to get a little bit of length through this side body as we reach down. And we're going to add into this, actually before we do that, let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So start with nice inhale, exhale, scoop. Feel that load, and big toe on the left side is definitely starting to feel more mobile. And now, after we get a few of these, nice scoop, feel that load. Now we're going to inhale as we allow that hip to drop. Pelvis can tilt a little bit. We're getting sway in that back lightly. Exhale as we lift that hip up. Inhale as we feel that knee drop. Are you able to move as far on this side? Does it feel different? Is one side painful and the other side not painful? That can be a pretty good assessment for some specific positional issues that we're dealing with. You know, what are the particular patterns that our body is bracing and trying to support? But I want to make sure we are not moving into pain. Once we get 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to go back to the first side again. We're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to add a component to it. So big toe still tucked underneath. Now, as we reach our hip down, we're also going to reach our shoulder up. So I don't want to side bend again. So I don't want that opposite shoulder dropping down. We're seeing if we can drop that knee down as we elevate without lowering that opposite shoulder. It might lower a little bit, but we're trying to limit how much it lowers. Inhale, we're bringing the hip up as we drop the shoulder down. Exhale as we reach that hip and reach that hand up at the same time. We're working on lateral extension of the spine. This actually feels really good and juicy in that, specifically in that area where it feels kind of vulnerable. Doesn't feel, it's not painful. It actually feels like feels good. It feels like I'm doing something hopeful. And I can definitely feel a light stretch. I don't want to go into a heavy stretch. Once we do 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to switch back to the other side. Again, big toes tucked and loaded. Starting with just that hip drop. Exhale as we bring it up. Inhale as we reach. And then we're going to add in our, as we drop that hip, drop that knee, we're also reaching up to the ceiling. A lot of what we're doing here is kind of mobilizing the hip and the pelvis, and more importantly, we're getting mobility into that lumbar spine related to the hip. When the hips and the spine get tight and compressed, they will lock those vertebrae down and shrink them tight together to where they can't move, they can't rotate, they can't laterally flex, and they become really painful because when joints are locked down, you're basically going bone into bone, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable. So if we can get some space through the hips into that low back, things tend to move a little bit better. They're more free, they move more efficiently, they're less painful. All right, we're going to come back to our starting point of just sitting, and I want to reassess our crocodile breath. So making a nice big C shapes with the hands, thumbs in the back, index fingers in the front. Try to make sure the shoulders are fairly soft and relaxed. I don't want to be hunched or shrugged here. Nice inhale in through the nose, and we're filling up that abdominal wall, feeling like a balloon. See if we can feel it expand in all directions. On the exhale, drawing that navel into the spine, Allow the hands to cinch down a little bit to create some resistance for that next inhale. Notice, do you have better access to breath? It's a little easier to get breath into all of these spaces, not just front, but out through the sides, as well as into the low back. Say I have about a 20 to 30% improvement in that ability to expand out into that breath. I still feel a little stretch on this right side, but it's significantly improved. I have more access to it. Doesn't feel quite as uncomfortable. Now, if you're dealing with back pain and you went through that and you found that you got some relief, then I would encourage doing these movements periodically throughout the day. You don't have to do them all at once. You can do one at a time, 30 seconds, 1 minute, up to 5 minutes, kind of in the empty spaces of your day. Wherever you have a break from your chair, it's a great place to do it, especially if you're spending a lot of time in your chair. The more you're able to do it, the more benefit you're going to get through the end of the day. And more likely by the end of the day, your back is going to feel a lot better than it did at the beginning. So I hope that helps. I'm just kind of coming back and reassessing my stand. I definitely have better access to hips. I'm able to stand a little taller into that hip. It's still sensitive, but man, it is not quite as old man feel as I was before. I feel like shoulders are a little bit more over my hips, not as twisted, not as much of that side shift. Still got some work to do in order to get better throughout the day, but